Welcome to the Vegan Pulse, the podcast where compassionate individuals from around the globe share their personal journeys into veganism and discuss their ongoing efforts to promote this ethical lifestyle, with your host, Nancy Arenas.
Our guest today is Gabriel Gaarden, who after completing degrees in sociology and Spanish, Gabriel's passion shifted toward plant-based nutrition. He returned to the University of New Mexico to become a registered dietitian nutritionist. Unlike many of his peers, Gabriel also holds a master's degree in public health. This unique combination allows him to focus on upstream prevention work related to obesity and chronic diseases.
Hi, Gabriel. How are you?
I'm doing great, Nancy. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Thank you for asking. I appreciate it. So today, I think what I want to ask you is this. I was having a conversation with someone the other days, and they asked me a question that no one had ever asked me before. And that is, why do you want me to be vegan? I was giving them a vegan cookbook so that they could look into veganism and whatever. And it wasn't like a mean thing, but it was more like an informative thing. So I was telling him, well, besides the animals and the planet, for your health. So
exactly.
If someone asked you, Gabriel, why do you want me to be vegan? What would you answer?
Yeah, there's a lot of things that we can say because there are so many great reasons to be vegan, right? And those of us that have been vegan for either a short amount of time, but perhaps especially for a long amount of time, we just find more and more reasons over time why it's such a good idea. And yeah, the original reason that I became vegan was for health. I was struggling with my gut, a lot of chronic kind of inflammation. Overall, my health was pretty good, but I knew that my gut wasn't in good shape. I just didn't feel my energy levels weren't consistent over time, bloating, gas, abdominal pain, discomfort over time. And so I was on a quest ever since my kind of late teens and early 20s when these issues got kind of progressively worse and worse to improve my overall health and improve the health of my gut. So I improved the overall health of my gut so that I could feel well on a daily basis. I mean, life without feeling well just isn't as fun. It's hard. We have to drag our bodies around, and we really don't get as much pleasure, as much joy out of our experiences. We can't give as much back if we're passionate about giving back to the people around us, the communities around us, trying to make a difference, trying to do well, by our communities, by our family members, by our loved ones and the people around us. And so I wanted to show up and put my best foot forward every day. And I knew that I needed to take good care of my health to do that. And so through a process of education, watching different documentaries, reading different books, I came to a plant-based diet, a vegan diet, and over time learned how to use plants to heal my gut so that I could feel really energetic and really good every day. And now people are amazed. I was just at the park the other day playing with my girlfriend's son. He's an 11-year-old. We were running, up and down the playground, crawling on all fours, running a mile a minute. And I had a grandmother there who was there with her wonderful grandson who ended up playing with us. And she said, oh my gosh, how do you do this? You've got as much energy as these 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12-year-old kids, and you're going nonstop. And I said, well, yeah, just because I'm 36 years old doesn't mean that I want to let the kids have all the fun. I don't want to be one of those adults who just stands around as a bystander and just has to sit and watch the kids have fun and do all the play because they don't have any energy anymore. And I constantly hear adults say they'll watch kids run around the soccer field if we're at a soccer game or around the playground like I was a few weeks ago. And they'll say, oh man, if I could only have their energy again, oh man, if I only had that kind of energy. Ooh, this is funny. My screen just went to sleep. And so I don't see you anymore, but I know you're still there because my laptop's on.
Yes, I'm still here.
Yes. Okay. There it came back. Wonderful. I've got like 2 screens going on here and I was like, oh no, Nancy's gone. And so, yeah, it's wonderful to have great energy every day. And that's one thing that helps reinforce for me on a personal level to continue to live this lifestyle because I feel so much better every day. And then from a more of an emotional and psychological standpoint, not only do I feel well in my own body, but then after becoming vegan, I started learning more and more about the animal rights, animal well-being, and I learned more and more about the environmental aspect of eating a plant-based diet and how eating plants, eating these foods that are very low or the lowest end of the food chain, right? There's certain types of it, usually smaller animals eat plants, little herbivores, and then larger animals, the carnivores, will eat the herbivores. And then in many cases, we eat a lot of those bigger animals, whether it's the larger fish that eat the very small fish that are consumed by a little bit bigger fish, and then bigger fish, and then large fish. The problem is animals tend to accumulate lots of different toxins in their systems. And so the little ones accumulate a little bit of toxin, and then the little bit bigger ones accumulate toxins, and they accumulate the toxins of the smaller fish or the smaller animals that they consume. And once you get higher on the food chain, you have animals with very large amounts of toxins and heavy metals and other things in their bodies that then we humans end up consuming when we kill and eat them. And so eating plants, eating incredibly low on the food chain, is a great way to protect ourselves from eating all these environmental pollutants and toxins that end up in our food supply. And then also, we're doing right by the environment because it's much lower in terms of its greenhouse gas emissions and its production of other toxic gases like methane and nitrous oxide that are really bad for the atmosphere. It's much better for the health of our water, keeping our water systems cleaner, keeping our oceans from continuing to acidify. And industrial animal agriculture is one of the key drivers for ocean acidification, the desertification of our land, the erosion of our soil, the making dirty or making unclean our waterways so that they're not safe places for all the animals in those natural ecosystems to inhabit. And so there's literally 1,000,001 and counting reasons why it's a good idea to eat a plant-based diet, to become a vegan. And so those are the kind of things that I would share with someone. And then, of course, there's the animal rights. Sometimes I think people kind of cringe because they don't want to think. There's this cognitive dissonance that takes place because we don't have to do the killing and we don't have to see the killing because it happens in these slaughterhouses behind closed doors that people don't ever have to watch or don't ever have to see the kind of suffering that takes place. But for most humans don't want to see suffering. They don't want to inflict suffering on other sentient beings that feel pain and that feel suffering. But because we're so far removed from it, people don't ever have to think about it as much because they just show up to McDonald's and get their chicken McNuggets, or they show up to Arby's and get their huge roast beef sandwich, but they never saw what happened to the animals in the process before that roast beef sandwich got inside their little wrapper, at Arby's, or their chicken McNuggets got all wrapped up in their little container at McDonald's. And so education is super important. But I try to be a lighthouse rather than a tugboat because I know if I'm trying to tug people along, that'll usually, just like a tug of war, they'll just end up tugging back and entrenching themselves even further in their position, and they won't want to change. So instead, I try to being positive, uplifting, encouraging, and just living kind of my own true self. And through that, I hope to be a lighthouse to kind of shine the way for other people to make change rather than being a tugboat and trying to tug them along in the process and then just having them dig their heels in and say, don't be judgmental. Don't try to change me, And so that's the best advice that I have to offer.
Yeah, that's a great advice. I mean, like I said, when I was talking to this person, it was just like for a second it caught me like off guard because I had not ever been asked that question before. And I was like, well, you look like a compassionate individual and who cares about others and your health. And so after that, he was like, well, thank you for seeing me as such. And I'm going to look into it, which is great. That's pretty much a win for me.
Yeah, it's the best that you can hope for, other than somebody miraculously saying in that moment in time, hey, I'm never going to eat another animal again. A light's gone off, a light is shining in front of me, a door has been opened, and I'm going to walk through it, and I'm never going to turn back.
Yeah, that's awesome, right? That's like you hear all of Earth go, oh! All the angels singing. Oh, yeah, another vegan. Kind of a thing, yes. And I, like you, don't want to be one of those older individuals who can only sit and watch. I like to do. I mean, right now I can't, I'm recuperating from surgery, but I like to do. I don't like to sit and watch. And the same thing, people say, how come you always like, you got all this energy? And you know, I'm like, it's my food. It's my fuel. It's, what I put into my body. It's not something that, that was someone's life taken or some agony was experienced. It's just the celebration of food itself, which is
Exactly. And there's wonderful ways to celebrate with plant-based foods. And also, we have so many great options. I used to be a real zealot when it came to whole food, plant-based nutrition, and I may return there at some point. But just in experiencing, in my relationships and family environments and social environments, I needed to sometimes perhaps think about being a little bit more flexible. And it's so easy. And I'm just speaking to like more of a traditional American diet. We have so many options for great vegan burgers and vegan versions of chicken and vegan versions of sausage and every other wonderful vegan versions of eggs, everything under the sun that you can imagine, vegan dairy products, vegan cheeses, vegan milks. You have all these wonderful options now, and they continue to be better when it comes to flavor profiles, and they continue to be better. There's companies who are making them in more and more healthy ways, so
yes,
they're more
they are.
minimally processed. And so there's wonderful options that still allow you to kind of take care of the cravings that you may have for a burger or for cheese or for some of these other things that people say, oh my God, I could never be a vegan because I could never live without those foods. It's like, hey, there's just veganize it.
Yeah, there you go. Just veganize it, and you can veganize everything. My saying is, anything you can do, I could do vegan. I could do vegan and good.
Exactly. And I've had like your garbanzo bean versions of like a tuna salad, a tuna salad with garbanzo beans and like a little bit of kelp or a little bit of
Yeah.
dulse flakes to make that little bit of sea vegetable flavor like we get from different types of fish. And you can make an incredible tuna salad with garbanzo beans and a few other healthy plant-based ingredients, and you don't have to harm the wonderful tuna in the process. Leave them in the ocean. They're an important part of the ecosystem, the marine ecosystem of our oceans throughout the world. We shouldn't be overfishing them all the time and leading to all these imbalances and literally fishing our oceans out of fish because we're over consuming all these products because there's too many people who have greed and desire for these foods.
Yeah, and the other thing that people should consider, besides the fact that all animals are here for their own purpose and not to be, taken by us humans. We feel like we could take anything, and that's just destroying the planet as we see it happening now, unfortunately. Um, Instead of letting everyone be who they are and what they're meant to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So hopefully this is just all part of the process of kind of waking everybody up, right? And saying like, hey, we can live in a way that's true to our values of not harming others and, not committing murder and, conserving and helping to preserve our natural resources so that this planet is a beautiful, wonderful place to live for many, many, many generations to come.
Yes. And I think education, like you were saying before, is key. I think a lot of people, and I'm saying this because sometimes I go places and people are, oh, what are you eating? Oh, and then they taste it. Oh, that's great. I think that people are brainwashed into thinking that our normal food are those dead flesh from these poor animals on our plate, when in fact, it's not. Our food should be plants and seeds and vegetables and all those things that you talked about before, nuts and grains and things like that. And I think that everyone has been so conditioned to think otherwise. And then they get amazed when they taste, like, I know that it's happened to me. I've offered someone something that's vegan, and they're like, oh my gosh, like somebody said, you can't bake without eggs or milk. And then I got one of those, I don't know if you've ever tasted the Rubicon chocolate cakes that they have. they are amazing for those, every now and then I treat myself to a sweet, and that's one of them. And people who swore that you couldn't bake, they're like, and then now they're getting them. So when they want to go get something, they go get that. So it's just education on different things that pertain.
Yeah, education and exposure. Because if we're never exposed to these opportunities, we'll never think that there's a possibility for something out there and a different way to do things. But it's like, oh, wow, I tried this indulgent, rich chocolate cake from Rubicon Bakery, and I realized I don't have to have a chocolate cake that's loaded with butter and milk and eggs. I can have one that's just loaded with plants, and it tastes just as good, and I'm not doing all the damage to the environment and to the animals in the process, and I'm doing less damage to my body, because we know that overloading our body with all those saturated fats and other things that we get in animal products is not good from a long-term health perspective, especially for our cardiovascular health.
Right, exactly. Well, Gabriel, another segment has come to an end, and I look forward to many more.
Me too. Pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining us on Vegan Pulse, where we've shared remarkable journeys and ongoing efforts of compassionate individuals worldwide. These stories inspire and empower, urging you to embrace a vegan lifestyle and contribute to a more compassionate, sustainable world. Remember, your choices matter, and together we propel the vegan movement forward. Keep advocating, making a positive impact, and pulsing with compassion. Until next time.